By now you have heard that Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, is openly gay. What you may not know is that our very own Bennet Marks started Apple Computer's first Gay Employees Association, and here to tell us all about that and the history is Bennet Marks. It's wonderful to have you here, Bennet.
Thank you very much.
Now tell me, take us back in history. What was the general climate like back in 1986 for the LGBT community?
Well, it was a fairly early time in gay rights, and it was also a very difficult time because it was about 5 years into the AIDS crisis, and people were dying by the thousands, and nobody really understood what was going on terribly well. There were not effective treatments, and there was a lot of fear, stigma, hatred. Very difficult time. In corporations, people were generally in the closet. Almost everyone I knew was in the closet, and were not openly gay at work. A couple of Silicon Valley companies had gay employees groups. My partner, Kim, who is now my husband, worked for Hewlett Packard, and they had had a group for several years, but they tended to be social groups and mutual support groups. They were often flew under the radar and were not working with their companies or terribly visible in the company.
You started the first employee group, LGBT group at Apple.
The only one, really. They've changed. It was called Apple Lambda when I started it. They've changed their name to Pride at Apple, but it's actually been almost 30 years now of that organization.
Wow, Bennet, that's such a legacy. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
And tell me, when you started it, did you have any idea how you were going to do it, who you were going to work with, how you were going to get your message out to the employees at Apple?
You know, I had to make it all up. I really did. There was an initiative on the ballot called Prop 64, the Lyndon LaRouche Initiative, which was a misguided and punitive AIDS initiative. And I had been out for about 4 years to myself and to my gay friends and to some people at work one at a time. And this is when I first got involved with any kind of activism. I went to a meeting about how to fight Prop 64. And people were all volunteering what they could do. I'll do this, I'll do that. And I thought, oh, I can do fundraising among all the apathetic, rich gay people I know at Apple. And I realized I didn't know any. I knew like one or two people. Everyone is in the closet. And I thought, Apple needs an organization so that the next time an initiative, even if I can't do it in time for this, the next time an initiative comes along, I want a mailing list. I want to have one. And I also decided very early on that I didn't want to fly under the radar. I wanted visibility for LGBT people we said gay and lesbian back then, at Apple. I wanted to work with the company on changing policies and on getting their support. So really, the first thing I did after talking to one or two friends was to go to HR and say, I want to start this organization called Apple Lambda. How do I go about it in a way that fits in with the company's culture?
That was so brave.
Looking back on it, I think maybe it was.
And what was the reaction of everyone at the company?
The people I dealt with in HR and the executives I talked to, they were, I didn't get homophobia from them, but I got a kind of indifference. It was like, why would you want to do something like that? We don't understand. Is there a problem you're trying to solve? And there's this one story that I really remember very well. I went to go meet with a person in HR, and I sat down with him, and I had like a sample flyer that had Apple Lambda on it and the little Apple logo and a Lambda. And he said, now, we don't have anything against our gay employees, and if there's problems you're experiencing, they should come to us one at a time. But we don't let the Apple name or the Apple logo be associated with any particular lifestyle, was the term he used. And I had been very lucky. On my way into his office, I had walked past a shelf of HR materials, and I had grabbed one impulsively and stuck it in my notebook. And I pulled it out now, and it was a flyer for the Apple Parents Forum, which was for people at Apple who had small children or are expecting to have small children soon. And it was like, oh, you don't let the Apple name be associated with any lifestyle. And he just sort of looked at it and said, well, you got a point.
Oh, Bennet.
And that was the moment that I knew that we were going to be able to work with the company, that we were going to be able to be public, because I could make the point that this was nothing more unusual than a group of employees with some common interests and common concerns, like that, just like the Apple Parents Forum or anything like that. And from there on, I worked with more and more people in the company, both gay people and not gay people. Mm-hmm. And it was very exciting. I was an engineer at Apple. I wrote software. Mm-hmm. But through Apple Lambda, I just got to meet so many people, and I got to work with HR and PR and the exec staff and legal, and it really expanded my horizons. I learned a lot about dealing with a corporation, dealing with people, mm-hmm. and of course I met wonderful people who joined mm-hmm. Apple Lambda, and they did so much.
Tell me about the accomplishments of the group.
Our first accomplishment was just to come together and start mm-hmm. supporting each other.
Definitely.
And that turned out to be very important because people just felt very isolated. Mm-hmm. They didn't know any other gay people at the company, or they knew one or two, and they felt very isolated. And then we started becoming visible. We started, doing projects or having talks that we invited everyone to, just to let them know we were there, just to make it public. And it raised awareness of our issues. Now, the two key issues for us that we could focus on was a non-discrimination policy for sexual orientation. The state did not have a legal policy at the time. There was no law protecting gay and lesbian people at that time. And so to get the company to put in such a policy was a very, very big deal for us. And that took a few years. And then the other one was domestic partner benefits. And that was, that costs money. A non-discrimination policy is one thing, but domestic partner benefits does cost money, and you really, really have to convince people that it's the right thing to do, and it's the fair thing to do, and that it's good for the company. And we worked for years on that project, and we got it done. My memory says that in Silicon Valley, Apple was the first corporation that had either of those things. And then other corporations were like, oh, look, Apple's doing that. We have to do that too. And they ran on behind. So we were like, a ripple moving through a pond.
Great accomplishments.
We're very proud of it.
Yeah, and tell me about today. What's going on at Apple today?
Well, I left the company in '97. And after we got a non-discrimination policy and domestic partner benefits, a lot of people were thought like, oh, well, we got the big ones, we can just sit back in our chairs now. Some people disagreed and thought there's a lot yet to be done, and there is. There's always an enormous amount to be done, and you always have to keep your eye on maintaining what you've got, too. But I know the people who are in Apple Lambda over the years, I have friends, and it's sort of tapered off somewhat, and they didn't march in the parade anymore. But this last year, Apple Lambda marched in the San Francisco parade for the first time in about 8 years.
Wonderful.
They had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. There was all this pent-up demand. And their CEO, Tim Cook, marched with them. That was before he came out of the closet. And we all know that with the recent Indiana law, it was corporations who said, we think this is a bad idea for business.
It really warms my heart to hear your story on that.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Bennet is inviting former Apple Lambda members over to his website at applelambdahistory.wordpress.com or to Facebook and search for Apple Lambda History. Coming up next, Shakespeare Santa Cruz's new season. You're watching Outlook Video.
We'd love to get mail from you. Email us at comments@outlookvideo.org.
To contact us by phone, call 408-293-3040, extension 205.
Visit our website at outlookvideo.org.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/OutlookVideo.
And connect with us at facebook.com/OutlookVideo.